In this video, I'm gonna give you a quick overview of the settings that we use in RCS O2 for GT3 racing. Before we go into the details, I would like to draw your attention to the version that I'm using here, that is version 10035. I believe that on RCS O2 website you can find different versions. I recommend, if you can, to download this version because it's the one that I know it works. Next, we move into the race management tab, and this comprises of two sub-tabs, the team setup and the single event. In the team setup, you can assign a specific ID to a team, and also you can check which car is assigned to a given team and how many damage points a team has, and also the color for the dashboard. Here you can also set up the cars and the team's settings. Now, going back to single event, so this is the Endurance Full, is the name that I've given to the event for GT3 here in Auckland. Now we are gonna have a look at the settings for a given event that applies to the practice, qualify, and race within an event. The first setting is the type of a penalty to be given when a false start is detected. So in my case, I will set up to stop and go. Stop and go is the value is then 10 seconds, and you have 3 laps max before serving the stop and go. Afterwards, basically no lap will be counted. Then following settings is the minimum lap time, but it does not work, so please ignore it. Then we have the burn rate at which fuel gets burned, the time for refueling, this is 15 seconds of 400 liters. Then we have the seconds for changing tires, which is set to 5, and following by the seconds required for a full repair, which is 10 seconds. The following settings are for the track call, so I have disabled the manual pause, and I have set up the auto pause to track call. The manual pause allows drivers to initiate a pause in the racing through a combination of buttons. So in my case, I have completely disabled this function. RCS O2 is able to automatically detect when a car does slot, and you can either issue track call, which means all the cars will stop on the track, a yellow flag, which means the cars will go at a lower speed, or do nothing, which means all the rest of the car will keep going around as nothing happens. And in that case, you need to have a marshal to put the cars back into the slot. The next 3 settings are related to pit stops. So the post-pit functions when track call means that when cars are in the pit and car the slots, basically you can stop, pause any functions that are happening within the pit stop. So in this case, for GT3 racing here, we are not pausing any of these functions. You could also allow tires and refuel at the same time. In this case, we are not allowed this. And the last option here, maintenance can option pit, is disabled. But it's obvious to say that when a car is in the pit, you can take the car out without issuing a track call. For a given event, you need also to give a tire profile and power profile. In this case, I've set up a GT3 Endurance for tires, and I'm using the default power profile. I'll give a bit more explanation about this later on. The time for auto damage is the time in milliseconds that the system waits before taking damage points from a car that has detected that come off the track. In this case, it's set up to 2 milliseconds or 2 seconds. The last option is the manual track haul, which I have set up here in this case in brake, but because the manual pause is disabled, so this basically does not do anything for our settings here. Let's go back to full screen. As you can see, each event has 3 sessions: practice, qualifying, and race. You can enable all of them at the same time. In this case, what this means is that once a session is concluded, the system automatically will jump to the next. For instance, in this case, if I have practice and qualify enabled, then I start with the practice, and then once practice is concluded, the system will move straight into qualify. In our case, I prefer to just enable each manually. So the practice is a 5 minutes timed session with the fuel and tire simulation on, and we have 1 set of hard and 1 set of soft. Qualify is also a timed session, 5 minutes with the fuel and tire simulation on, and we have again 1 set of hard and 1 set of soft. The qualify set fuel to default. Basically, I don't know what actually really does, so it's enabled, but because I do the manual selection of each session, it doesn't do anything for us. So race is endurance. It's 40 minutes. We have a full start detection on, which basically in case will issue the stop and go penalty. The race ends when a time is out. The other option would be to wait for the car under the same lap. Fuel simulation. Fuel is on with the fuel simulation on. Damage is also enabled. Damage when the slot is enabled. And finally, we have a tire wear enabled with 1 set of hard and 3 sets of soft tires. Next, I'm gonna show you how I have set up the tire profile for this GT3 Endurance Plus. So here you can create a new tire profile. So for this GT3 Endurance, for instance, I have set up the value here of 2.64. I don't know how to come up with that, but it works pretty well for our racing. Next, we have the longevity that I set up as good, so which means that the cars can withstand aggressive driving better than normal or bad, let's say. And then the other one is a flat spot, so you can take a percentage of damage out of wear actually out of from a tire when the car is slot. So I set up at low, which is 1%, but you can see there that there is a medium or high that can basically go up to 3 or 6%. Coming back to the main screen for single event, I want to show you now what happens when you define a new event from scratch. So when you click new, then you need to type the name of the event. So in this case, I'm going to use new event. And as you can see, there is a error message that pops up saying web profile not valid, power profile not valid. Now, the message is not that clear, but actually if you go and look at the tire profile and power profile entries, you see that there is nothing there. So when you create a new event, by default, nothing gets assigned from the set of profiles that you already have in already defined, let's say. So, but once you select something, the message will disappear. Another error message that you can have here is when there are no controller enabled or powered on. So for instance, in this case, if I turn off my controller, then you will see this message, no team enabled, and also you cannot start or select any selected sessions, let's say. If you go to team setup, here you can see that the no controller or no ID or no team is enabled. So coming back to single event, once I turn on the controller, you can see that the message goes away, and again the team entry here is enabled. Now let's have a look how to set up cars for a GT3 event, or at least how we set up the cars in RCS O2 for our GT3 event. As you can see, for let's say different type of brand or models, I've set up an entry here, but actually what you could do as well is to have just one single generic GT3 car, so that you can easily assign to anybody racing in your roster. So for here we have as an example, let's take this MG GT3 Evo. So you can set up the car of the name of the car, set up a picture, set up the class like in GT3, so you can define your own classes here. And then there are some other generic bits like the owner brand, whether it's a magnet or not, and blah blah blah. But the most important part, I think, it's around tank size and then max power. The tank size here I've set up at 450, and as max power basically set up at 100%. From I think from the power profile that you have enabled in the events you're gonna race. So in here you have also sound that you can play when the car goes over the start finishing line. So there are some nice pre-set up sounds of real car that you could enable. So and you can also play them. I mean, here just messing around. I'm not able to kind of play it for you. Next, we have the safe speed, which is the speed at which the car will go when, for instance, it's out of damage point, out of fuel, or when there is a yellow flag issued. Following that, we have the pit lane speed. That is the speed at which car will go when inside the pit lane. And then finally, we have the fuel power ratio. So this is how much power you will lose when the car is at full tank. So in this case, for instance, it's set to 30, so which means that when a car has a full tank, then it will go at 70% of the maximum power. When I have new drivers, I also like to set up a silver class for a given entry, where basically I reduce the amount of max power. So for instance, in this case, I have an MG GT3 silver, like a silver driver in a GT3 class. And in this case, I've set up the max power to 95, but I also kind of reduced the full power ratio value to 25. And the main reason is for the type of motors we are racing or we're using in the GT3 class. If I would leave the same amount of value as for a car that is at full power, then this would result in a very low speed for the situation where a silver car is in a full tank. So by going to 25% of reduction, then the car is still manageable. One thing to notice here is that you have option for assigning a car to teams. So just to be aware that this does not work, and you will need to go through the car setup in order to assign a car to a team. So we can exit now, and we can move to team setup. So here is where you can assign, you can define actually drivers. So you can have names for each of your drivers, and then you will need to assign drivers to teams. So you need to create entries for drivers, but also then you need to create entry for teams. And then one of the things that we need to realize is that RCS O2 is a team-based type of race control management. So once you have your pool of drivers and you create the different teams for your event, then you can assign for each team the different drivers from your pool. In our case, for instance, for each team, we have one driver associated with that. So here is also where you can define which car a team gets. So you do by this drop-down menu here, team car, and also you can select how many damage points a team can have. So in this case, we have 5 damage points per each team. You can also select the color for the team, which will be displayed in the dashboard, and the text color as well. Finally, the 3 parameters here are the amount of fuel that you can set up for each of the sessions within an event. So for instance, here I have 100% fuel for beginning of practice, 50% for the beginning of qualifying, and 100% for the beginning of a race. So there you have it. This is how we have set up RCS O2 for our GT3 class. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment below. If you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you can. We appreciate that. Thank you.